Hello from the Music Interview Corner, guys. I have something special for you tonight, especially for the Magic the Gathering community. I'm here with Planeswalker, with Sozos and Jason. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for taking time for the interview.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for having us.
Yes, I'm excited too. And my first question is, how did you two meet?
Oh man, we've had a long, rich history together.
Yeah, it's been like 7 years now, right? Like 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll let
so
Sozos take it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. So like I'll just say my side because Helium Prime had an audition for a vocalist, and I posted a video auditioning like with their song "Life Finds a Way," and yeah, Jason like contacted me almost immediately, like the next like few hours after, and that's how like we met digitally, like on the internet, and then eventually when I got into Helium Prime as a member, I met him in real life when I flew to California for a couple of music videos for the second album of Helium Prime, and that's how I met Jason.
Yep. Yeah, we were holding auditions. We like just signed to AFM Records, and it was funny because a lot of people asked me like, would you consider a male vocalist? Because on our first album we have Heather Michelle. And I was like, oh, I don't know, like, we've already kind of established ourselves as this. We should probably keep it like this. And then here comes Sozos to just make me a liar. Like literally, as soon as we got his audition, I was like, if the only reason I'm not choosing this guy is because he's not a woman, like, what does that say? So yeah, like it was pretty much an instant, like, yeah, this is the guy, and as we go along, we'll get into how that's why he's not there now and why there's Planeswalker. Things don't always turn out as or things aren't always as easy as you hope. We'll just say that. So that's how we met. He sent in the audition, and it was funny because I was like still sleeping, and I woke up to like the group chat, and they're like, "Dude, did you see this guy yet?" So like everyone was already feeling it. And again, in my head, I'm like, well, it's a guy. I don't care, dude. But I'm like, let me watch this. Let me watch this video. And then he starts singing, and I'm like, oh, damn. Let me just eat my words real quick. So that's how we met. Yeah. And we did one show together in Canada for this festival called So actually, we've only ever done 2 shows together.
Yeah.
Both hyperspace. Yeah. So that's like our spot, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
I was
that's how we met.
to ask, how is it for you? Because Jason, you're in California, and Sozos, you're in Cyprus. You're basically living in opposite parts of the world. How does it work for you to be in a band together when you're living so far apart?
With Planeswalker, it works well because we put a lot less pressure on it, Yeah. And that goes into why he's not with Prime anymore. It just, like I mentioned, we just signed AFM Records like any other band, young. We signed to this label. I'm thinking, oh, we've made it, bro. We did it. Everything's going to start happening for us. So, because I was warned, like, maybe don't take a singer from Europe. It's going to be difficult. I was like, nah, dude, we're on AFM Records now, bro. It's cool. But it was very complicated. Like, we're not a money making band, realistically. And so it just, there were tours we just couldn't realistically do. And we got this like big tour with Unleash the Archers. And again, like we just couldn't afford to get Sozos out.
Because of visa shit?
So
visa stuff?
Yeah, visas, logistics. And again, we just like, we're not really a band that makes money, even if we do have a pretty decent following, but that doesn't always equal dollar signs,
Yeah.
And but with Planeswalker, it it's technically just the 2 of us, so it makes it a lot easier. And we just bounce the ideas back and forth, and there's the time difference, but I've gotten used to it. I'll send him a message and just like, yeah, when he sees it, he'll see it and he'll get back to me, and then I'll get back to him when I see it. So far it's been pretty smooth,
Yeah, it's like having a pen pal, but instead of like letters, it's like, messenger,
right,
and audio files. It works well for me as well. Like there's, as Jason said, there's not the pressure to like make something now, and we have deadlines and stuff that does not exist. So like it's more of oh, I had this cool idea, and then we bounce off of like each other at a very slow pace compared to like I imagine other bands. But yeah, I think it works well for Planeswalker, and it allows us to, you know, move forward with something when we're like definitely sure this sounds amazing.
And you know, I think that's the important part with it, you know, because like I'll hit up Sozos with this long list of plans I have and be like, I want to do this then and this now. But it's like, if that day comes and we didn't do it, I'm not sitting here like, you know, like it's more of a, this is what I'd like, this is what I'm hoping. But especially with him now in Gloryhammer, it's like respecting that schedule. It's like we just work around what's going on in the moment, you know. So
yeah, and speaking of cool ideas, how did you come up with the idea of starting a Magic the Gathering themed band?
Oh, that's all Jason. Jason, you say.
So like, I don't know if you meant to do it on purpose, but it's so great because these first few questions, they work so well together because you know, Sozos and I talked and we both agreed that Prime should try to find someone in America to be the singer. But, you know, I loved his voice. I knew I wanted to do something with him again someday. You know, I didn't have anything. Then I got into Magic the Gathering. Some friends at work got me into it. And at first I was like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. Then I started getting into the lore of the game. And that's when I really fell in love with it. And so I was like, I wanted to start writing songs about the lore, but Helium Prime's a very science fact, science fiction kind of band. So that would never work. And I was like, well, I want to do something with Sozos. Maybe this is it. And I knew Sozos didn't play, but I know he likes a good story. So I was like, maybe I can convince him with the lore side. So I just hit him up and was like, hey, man, I have this idea. Would you be interested in doing it with me? And thankfully, he was into it. And so this was a good way for me to have this new outlet to write about stuff that wouldn't fit with Prime and to get to work with Sozos again.
Yeah.
And just disclaimer, everybody, I love the lore, but I'm far from an expert. So, you know.
But I think
like
the lore
probably
is expensive. I tried to look into it. I think it could take a lifetime to read all of it, I feel.
Yeah. Well, and because that's the thing is whenever a new set of cards comes out, there's a story to go with it. So we're talking 30 plus years of lore and sets. And nowadays there's so much, like they're printing so much material that I don't even know what's going on in the modern stories because I'm like, there's so much material, like we'll never touch everything. Like even if we continue to do Planeswalker till we're old, it'll be impossible to touch it. So I'm like, whatever. I don't know what's going on right now. There's plenty of stuff to pull from that. I'm not worried. There'll always be material to write about.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep.
How did you come up with the idea of combining Magic the Gathering with power metal?
So basically, I think right there, right, I answered in the last question, but I fell in love with the lore. I was like, man, this is some cool stuff. And I wanted to write songs about it. Hit up Sozos and here we are, you know, just the lore really kind of spoke to me. And I was like, man, this would be really fun. And I know we're not the first. There's other bands who have written songs here and there. And since starting Planeswalker, there are a few other bands who I think are based on Magic the Gathering. But from what I can tell, we're still the first one that's like, in your face, this is undeniably Magic the Gathering. You know, like even the name Planeswalker, like you can't mistake that for anything else. So
I sorry, Jason. Like I also think like Magic the Gathering lends itself well to power metal because from the things I've read, I haven't read much, but from what I've read, like it's all sweeping epics and like big stories with larger than life characters head-to-head battles. Like it's very power metal. Like it's fantasy, and that inherently goes well with power metal because that's where that came from. So I think it was very natural to like draw things from the story and put them alongside music that's like in that genre.
Yep. And another cool thing, and I've said this to Sozos many times, is when you get into the lore, they kind of pull from everything. I mean, they have the fantasy, but they have the horror. They have, I mean, even some steampunk stuff. They have gothic landscapes and stuff. So it's like, I think one of the fun things with Planeswalker is we don't have to limit ourselves. Like we can pull from any genres we want, and it would make sense in Magic the Gathering, you know, and that's really fun to think about. But, yeah.
Okay, anything to add? Are you ready for the next question?
Ready.
I think we're good. Yeah.
So, yeah, I would like to talk about Planeswalkers, about what Planeswalkers are for the people who might not know, but I guess most of the people are Magic the Gathering fans who are watching this. But Planeswalkers are a special category of character players, right? And they can move between different planes of the multiverse of Magic the Gathering. And from my research, I found that there are currently 78 Planeswalkers in the game, but I don't know if that's changed. Maybe there are more now. But my question was, what fascinates you about Planeswalkers? Because something must fascinate you because you named your band after them.
Right. So this is one of the things where I'm like, I'm not an expert. There might be 78, there might be more, I don't know. So I think what that is referring to is the actual cards in the game. Like
yes.
there's 78 playable cards. But again, each Planeswalker is within the lore. So that could be right. So you as the player, now I've heard some people say this isn't true, but this is how I was taught, so this is what I go with. You as the player of the game are a Planeswalker. Just think of it as a
because you're moving between the universes too, right? Yeah.
Right, and you're dueling and you're fighting other Planeswalkers, and you know, it's like a very powerful mage or wizard, you know, who, and you know, it's in the name Planeswalker. So in Magic the Gathering, there's a bunch of different worlds, right? And they call them planes, but think of it like a planet, right? And you as the Planeswalker, you can travel to these different worlds, and you know, that's what creates, you know, the world building of Magic the Gathering, is there's all these different planes of existence, and that's where you get the different sort of topics. Like I was saying, like you can go, there's a plane that's very, you know, there's dinosaurs on it and it's in the jungle, or there's a vampire plane, you know, where vampires exist, and vampires and angels and stuff, and there's all these beautiful, I already said jungles, but like forest, and you know, so it's a really cool way that they can pull inspiration from everything. Like there's a plane that's very Viking inspired, there's goblins and stuff, and not everyone, it's like us, we're regular humans, right? We couldn't just snap our fingers and travel to Mars. Not that we'd want to, we'd die, but a Planeswalker could if they wanted to. And they're, you know, when they were originally made, they were considered like these godlike beings, you know, very, very powerful. That's in a nutshell a Planeswalker, right? And you basically get, every Planeswalker doesn't just start off with these powers. You get what's called the spark, which we actually have a song about on the first album.
But you need something crazy happening, like a near-death experience or something, right?
Exactly. So it's usually triggered by a very traumatic event that ignites your spark. So a lot of like some Planeswalkers can go their entire life and then they get their spark. Some people get it when they're younger. So it's not just something you can turn, but once you got it, more or less. Again, things happen in the lore. For me, Planeswalkers are, most stories are driven through the tellings of these Planeswalkers. So when coming up with a band name, Planeswalker just felt right, you know. They're the ones who tell the stories, and now we are.
Exactly. Yeah. And thematically it works because like we also move through planes to like and sing about different subjects. So it's like,
we totally didn't plan that, but it works.
It works in at least 2 levels, so it's good.
Yep. Exactly.
And how did you decide who would embody or play which Planeswalker? Because those are your Jace. And in your Oath of the Gatewatch video, your guest vocalists, Heather Michelle, that you mentioned from Helion Prime, and Brittany Slays from Unleash the Archers, or Chandra and Nissa, how did you decide who would be which Planeswalker?
You want to take this one, Sozos? I feel like I did most of the
Did
talk.
we decide? I think we established earlier that I could play Jace. And then really, I don't really remember how, like, did we write the song and then we were like, okay, we need to find people, and then you like scouted?
I mean, you know, anyone who knows me, Heather's like my best friend, and any chance I get to have her on a song, I'll do it. And yeah, so for this like particular question, like, so Sozos isn't always Jace, right?
Yeah.
He just was on Oath of the Gatewatch because the story we pulled from, that was one of the Planeswalkers. And I don't know, Sozos just had that Jace look to me. So I was like, yeah, you be Jace.
Yeah. Also Shadow of Emeria.
Right. Yeah. I'll talk about that one and why we did that. So we're like, all right, he's Jace. So there's a bunch of Gatewatch. Think of Gatewatch as like the Avengers of Magic the Gathering, right? So they're the powerful team that assembles to, you know, protect the planes of the multiverse. And but in their early conception, there was only 4 of them. There was Jace, Chandra, Nissa, and Gideon. I love working with Brittany. I've been friends with Brittany for a long time too. So they were just kind of my first 2 choices for Nissa and Chandra. And I just kind of went with who I felt would be better for each. And I don't know, Heather felt more like a Chandra than Nissa to me. And I think it worked out great. I mean, they both just were amazing in their roles, you know. And
sorry, if I can add to that, I think when we published the video of Oath of the Gatewatch, we had a lot of comments. How come Brittany isn't Chandra? Because people have this notion of Brittany in her Unleash the Archers band. It's like, oh, she would fit this kind of like more aggressive character, but I couldn't imagine the song work. Like, it would still work, but like I couldn't imagine it without having Brittany as Nissa. I think that like worked out perfectly.
Yep. And you know, one just cool thing about Heather is she can really turn on that sass, you know, and you really see it in the video and stuff. And Chandra's got that little sass to her. So yeah, they were great choices. Yeah. And then Sozos mentioned Shadow of Emeria. So another comment we kept getting is, where's Liliana? Liliana's a very popular Planeswalker, probably one of the most popular.
But she's a bit evil, isn't she? A bit on the dark side?
Yeah, she's a complicated character, right? Like she's gone evil, she's gone light, but I think at her core she's always been good, you know. But she, you know, she had a troubled upbringing, right? So and a lot of people were like, you know, how you doing Gatewatch without Liliana? And that's the thing, is like, well, we're pulling from the Oath of the Gatewatch story, which doesn't involve Liliana. But we just got so many comments of it that I just went to Sozos, was like, hey man, you want to just write? So we did Shadow of Emeria, which is like the next storyline, which has Jace seeking out the help of Liliana and going to that plane I mentioned with vampires and angels and stuff. And she joins the Gatewatch there. So we wrote that second part. Even though it appears first on the album, it's technically the sequel to Oath of the Gatewatch. So we wrote that as like, fine, here's Liliana. But it was great because we got Kristen Starkey from Temperance, and
she's so good.
Yeah, so that was amazing.
Yeah.
So I think that's why a lot of people see Sozos as Jace, as we did the 2 songs, and you know, that's our most viewed video, but he won't always be Jace. So yeah.
Interesting. And who made your customs?
I'll let Sozos do this one.
Yeah. So like on the US side, it turns out that Heather is amazing at making props and costumes. So
and she didn't even know it.
Yeah, like a lot of things. That was the first time she was putting her hands on props like that. But yeah, she made the costumes for the people in the US. but on this side, my grandma actually, who is a seamstress, I presented her with loads of like pictures of Jace, and it's like, could we make this work? Like, and my grandma didn't even like think about it. It's like, yeah, sure. Like, we need this and this and this, and then she worked for like many hours, like over the course of like maybe a month, and we did like loads of like try-ons and see, oh, that this fits, oh, this like layers this in this way, and then we ended up with something that I think like looks very respectable, like for something from someone that never actually did cosplay. My grandma can like sew and do stuff, but like this is pretty good. And then when I came to hyperspace to as Planeswalker in 2022, Heather was like that was amazing. Like Heather actually made some Jace medallions. I had some made from like polystyrene, but they weren't very good, and they like crumbled and fell apart, and I had to like paint them again and again. But she made some that I still have, and she gifted them to me when I arrived, and I still have them. And if I ever don that costume again, that's what I'm wearing.
Nice. I actually didn't think I knew that. I must have missed that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Heather got super into it. Heather made her costume because Heather actually does Chandra and Obnixilis, the villain, so she made both those costumes. And she did Gideon's costume and melded it to the singer for that song. But Brittany, it was funny because she just had that costume already. She's like, oh yeah, I have an elf costume. So more reason that she was meant to be Nissa, she had the costume. Yeah, she had the costume already. She had the ears, like she just already had it.
Yeah.
This video too, I love this video because it's a good reminder. Like we had zero budget for this video. Like Sozos edited.
Oh, it doesn't look like it. It definitely looks really like a lot
that's what I'm saying. I mean, my shots, literally, if you move the camera over an inch, there's a soccer field.
Oh my God, that's the art of filmmaking. That's exactly the art of filmmaking.
Yeah, like we're just like, this tree looks cool. Just make sure you don't get the soccer field in the shot. And we did Alex's and Chelsea's shots at a lake. So like again, if you would have looked behind us, there's just all these trucks and people at the lake. So it's just like, but it's just that good reminder, like if you got the right people, man, like it's one of my favorite videos I've done. Like it just looks so good.
Yeah.
And it was like that whole experience was great because I already like it was almost like the threshold of how far can I get my friends to do something? Because first it was like, hey, do you guys want to sing on this 11-minute song? Sure. Hey, do you guys want to be in the video? You down to do costumes? Sure. All right. I need and I was starting to feel bad, like, oh man, at some point one of them were gonna be like, dude, I'm done, but thankfully everyone was very into it, so it turned out really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks amazing. And Sozos, you edited that video, right?
Yeah. It took a long time. We had like, I had to buy a new hard drive just to fit all the footage, and then like my computer is fine, but it's not very fast, and it did struggle a lot. So it took a long time to edit. But yeah, I love the end product. I actually tried to color grade all the footage so that like we filmed in locations where the background would fit the Planeswalkers element. So like blue is island and green is forest, and like we shot on respective locations. But I also added some color grading to like tint it more towards that for each element. And I love watching that video. Like it's like everyone did great on that video.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's really great. And it is really impressive that you managed doing that, everyone being in a different location and then with no budget. I mean, it looks like it was expensive to make, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, if people know what they're doing, this just shows like this easily could have been a disaster. like, you know, so like me, Heather, Chelsea, and Alex are all kind of in the same area, kind of. But you got Sozos in Cyprus. You have Rav and Brittany in Canada, but on two separate parts of Canada. So, you know, getting everyone to, you know, coordinate it, like, it could have been a disaster, but everyone killed it. Like every shot looked great. Everyone found a great location. Cause yeah, that was the idea, is like, all right, everyone's going to be somewhere else in the world, but how do we connect it? And that's where I had the idea of like, oh, let's have the planeswalkers in their respected elements, like Sozo said. That makes it feel together, even though we're not, you know.
Yeah, it was a
And then
great idea.
yeah. And it really worked, because the people who noticed that really love it. They're like, oh, wow, I love how Chandra's in the mountains and, you know, Jace is on the island. And, you know, thankfully Sozos' backyard is an island. So
Yeah. I'm like, 20 minutes from like that coast. So it's good.
yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Like even in the, we did a Helium Prime song, Question Everything, that Sozos came back and did with us, and always get comments on like, some people think Sozos' shots are green screened. And I'm like, nah, dude, that's just where he lives, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I noticed that, of course, only the vocalists play Planeswalkers, but the band members don't. Why is that?
Yeah. And it's because the story, right? The singers were the ones telling the story, playing the characters. And so I thought of maybe having us dress up into something. But again, it came back to the zero budget thing. And Heather had already done so much making hers and making Ravs that I wasn't going to ask her to make some for us. And I didn't know what we would be. Like, I did think about it, you know, but it's definitely a singer's song, you know. And so I was fine with the singers being the ones to dress up and tell, they're the ones telling the story, and we're just providing the sick music, you know. So yeah, it just didn't feel necessary for the musicians to be a planeswalker, you know.
Yeah, I think that the closest we got to that is like, because we have some motifs that fit specific moments and specific characters. I think the band was the Eldrazi for a bit, whereas like when they're in that part of the song when Obnixilis goes Kozilek Rise and the band goes like pop, 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 like plays like really heavily. Like in my mind, that could be like, oh, the band is the Eldrazi, but it's very difficult to dress a band as a 4-dimensional eldritch horror, so we didn't do that.
We're not tall enough. So.
Yeah, not tall enough, not multi-dimensional enough.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, my bad.
You're only 3-dimensional.
I'll try harder. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Jason, if you could be any planeswalker, who would you be?
Ooh, man.
Who's the least traumatized?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Do you also have a favorite planeswalker, Sozos, that you would be if not Jace?
Oh, I'll let Jason answer first, and I'll think about it a bit.
People who know me know that I love Nicol Bolas, but I don't know if I'd want to be a dragon. I don't know. Sorry. But you know, the one who comes to mind is a character I fell in love with, and I'm hesitant to say it, but like, I don't know, whatever. Because I know I won't be this planeswalker, but would be Urza. So he is probably one of my favorite Magic the Gathering characters just all around. You know, but he also like didn't become a planeswalker till he was like old, so I'd have to like forever be old, but I guess that's a price to pay to essentially be a god, you know. And yeah, you know, I'm trying to think of who else I might want to be, but you know, Urza's great. You know, funny enough, I like Jace a lot too, but you know, it's already Sozos took the good one, man.
Like those are both the names that I would say, because like I do like Jace like as a character, and I do agree with Jason that I kind of like that from the 4 planeswalkers that we had in Oath of the Gatewatch, that's the one that I was more similar to. But Urza, is someone that I have been reading about. Not gonna say more. And he is also a cool character.
We're very subtle.
Yeah, very subtle. But yeah, Urza is also cool. Mishra, I found very compelling. His brother.
But he was
he's
never
not,
a planeswalker.
Yeah, he was never a planeswalker, so I won't say that. But like, yeah, Urza is cool.
Yep. I think Soren might be cool. So he's a vampire planeswalker.
Oh yeah.
You know, getting in touch with my gothic roots, and I used to be very into like vampire stuff when I was younger. I played a lot of the games Vampire the Masquerade. It was a tabletop game, computer game. Actually, the second computer game, Bloodlines, is where I got the name Dire Peril, which was my very first band. So maybe going back in touch with my vampire roots, Soren, I might say, but you know, he's like a very pretty boy, and I don't know, it's not really my thing these days. So I don't know. Yeah. Tough to say. Also, this is showing my poser card because there's 78 planeswalkers and I probably can name like 15, you know. So again,
right.
Not an expert. We'll get there. We got
the ones you named up on the screen for our viewers, so they know what we're talking.
See, now I'm being challenged. Yeah. Next question. No.
Yes. When I did my research, I found that planeswalkers are kind of controversial in the Magic the Gathering community because some people think it takes too long to realize their potential and that they're too slow and too big of an investment. And I found also comments of people who were complaining that planeswalkers should be banned from the game because they're too powerful. And I wanted to hear what you think about that.
That's Jason's domain.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's talking about the cards themselves.
Yes.
And that just sounds like Magic players being Magic players. No offense, I'm one of them. But, you know, there's strong planeswalkers, there's weaker planeswalkers, but that's how any card in Magic works, is you have different levels, you know. There's commons, uncommons, rares, mythic rares. Usually the higher up it is, the stronger the card. And you know, with planeswalker cards, this I'm talking to people who play the game, right? Or who don't, but I'm not going to sit here and explain how it works. But essentially you have to level up the card before you can use what's called its ultimate ability. And so yes, sometimes it could take a while, but the thing is usually if you're going to use a planeswalker card, you're strategically using it. So I don't think they're overpowered. Unless a deck is built around planeswalker cards, which we call supergroup cards or decks, I'm never terrified when a planeswalker hits the field because yeah, they're easily dealt with, you know, unless somebody is building around abusing the planeswalker. But that's just how Magic is everything you're doing in your deck is to abuse whatever mechanic you're trying to do. So this just sounds like, you know, Magic players, some people like them, some people don't. And that's really all it is. But I don't think they're overpowered at all. They're just a card type, you know? And yeah, I've gotten my butt kicked to planeswalker cards, and sometimes that's just how it goes, you know?
When you said like supergroup deck, I was thinking of Avantasia, and I wanted to ask both of you about your musical influences when it comes to Planeswalker.
Ooh.
Like, yeah, we're kind of all over, you know. I'm gonna let Sozos go first because he did actually write the first album, so let's start there.
Yeah, let's do it. So it's usually three things. It's one of them is power metal in the vein of Sonata Arctica. Like I'm a big fan of that band and what they do with transitions and modulation and like a lot of things I picked up in the last like 5 years that I've been listening to them. So overall, that's one of my influences. The other is prog metal in the vein of Seventh Wonder. That's another band that I've been listening to a lot in the past like 15 years, like way longer. And like, I'm always trying to write something that doesn't take you where you would expect, but still sounds majestic enough to be passed for power metal, even though like a lot of the elements are prog influenced. And the third thing that I think made a difference while I was writing the album was I was really into J-rock and J-pop, and Japanese, like rock and Japanese pop, have this beautiful jazz chords and jazz chord sequences that are very, very rarely seen in like Western rock and Western metal. And because I was listening to like anime soundtracks is like where everyone starts, but then like if you listen to more and more, you start to pick up like patterns in the songs and transitions and transpositions that like they do sound very different, but they do not sound unpleasant in a way that like experimental jazz would sound, which is like completely new stuff. But it's like, to me it's weird sounding, and I wouldn't want to put that in a power metal song. But yeah, so like power metal in the vein of Son of Arctica, prog metal in the vein of Seventh Wonder, and J-rock were my main influences for the first album. And I think that is a good indicator on like what Planeswalker will sound like. But of course, Jason is also like much more involved this time around, which I'm like very thankful for, because like it's great to have like additional influences to like create something that it's essentially more fresh if there's like 6 things in it rather than 3 things in it. That's how I see it. So what, like, Jason, yeah, you should answer now.
Oh yeah, well, so because that's the thing is like when we did the first album, I forget exactly what I was doing, but I was busy with some Helium Prime stuff, and Sozos just kind of kept pumping out these songs, and I was like, yeah, I got this is great. And before I knew it, we almost had a full album. So I was like, man, you should just finish this album. Fuck it. Like, at that point. But we have talked a lot, and I did say like, moving forward, I do want to be more involved in the songwriting, because having a Magic the Gathering band and not writing for it would just have this empty place for me. But one thing we've talked about a lot with Sozos, because he mentioned all these things, which none of these things really influence me. But what I've said to Sozos and other people is it has been very inspiring and like not intimidating, but it's been really good for me, because Sozos writes so differently than me, and he does things that are a little difficult for me, but I love being thrown in those situations because it makes me want to be better. Like I don't sit here and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, how do I do this? And so it's, for me, it's really cool, because to me, it's important that Planeswalker sounds different than Helium Prime, otherwise, why are we doing it? And so I've told Sozos that it's important that even when we move forward and I'm giving ideas, I want him to Sozosify them, or something. And I think that worked really well on this new material we're working on, because I tried to write like Sozos, but the thing is I'm not Sozos, so it just doesn't come out naturally. So I've kind of just been like, dude, I'm just going to do what's comfortable to me. But I feel like it's worked, because on this newer material, I did contribute a bit. And then Sozos kind of took it and did his thing. And so it's like, you still hear my part in there, but it's been molded to be more of what Planeswalkers should sound like. And I think that's really cool, So even if it's not fully my riff at the end of the day, I think that's a good thing when it comes to Planeswalker. So, for example, Sozos was just on the new Helium Prime song. That sounds very Helium Prime. So if we did a Planeswalker song that sounded like the song we just did together,
yeah,
why?
Yeah, what's the point? Just make another Helium Prime one.
Exactly. There's even in one of the newer ones, there's like this pre-chorus part where I kind of started something, and Sozos were more or less completely changed it, but the drum beat's pretty much the same. And so it's little things like that where it's like, all right, so that's what I was going, and I like that, I feel like if it was, again, this is kind of the difference, because like when Sozos was working on lyrics for the Prime song, he was kind of changing things. I was a little more like, actually, can we keep it how it is? But I'm not like that with Planeswalker. With Planeswalker, I'm like, dude, take this and fucking just go wild. Sorry, can I cuss on this interview?
Yeah, of course. We love swear words.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big difference. And because some people think I'm this guy who like it's my way or the highway. But it's like it really depends.
Like the opposite is like,
yeah, like with Prime, I'm a little more uptight on what happens. But then with Planeswalker, I feel it's been a very good 50-50. Like, I never do anything without Sozos being comfortable with it. And then I have another group with Heather, actually. And, you know, that's Heather's thing. I'm like, hey, you're steering the ship, dude. So
are you talking about Off Romulus with that group?
Yeah, yeah.
You're the
And
mastermind
so
behind so many bands like Planeswalker, Helium Prime, and Off Romulus. And is Dire Peril still active?
Dire Peril's not. I'll talk about those in a second. But yeah, so yeah, it pretty much it depends on the circumstance, you know, but with Planeswalker, it's important to me that I like the idea of giving my ideas to Sozos and letting him do his thing, because that's what's gonna keep it Planeswalker, you know?
Yeah.
Because again, otherwise it's just Prime.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very easy for me too. Like I want to write music, but if you have like a blank sheet of paper, it's much harder to start than if Jason hands you, okay, I want to write a thing, because Jason is also the ideas man. So he comes up with the concept, which is also very important because that's what gives the song its vibe. So that's how I know what to write. And this time round, he very helpfully gave me directions on what the song should evoke, like in its sound, and that it makes it even better. And so when you have a kind of like scaffold to work with, and it's much easier to, you know, just take a direction and run with it than like write it from complete nothingness, like from scratch. So it's working very well for me as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I remember,
but yeah, you
sorry,
go ahead.
Go first. No, you can.
Well, I might be changing the subject, so if you had something to add, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I was also a bit changing the subject, because I remember, Sozos, in our last interview with Gloryhammer, you told me that when you made the first record, the first album for Planeswalker Tales of Magic, you didn't know much about Magic. And I wanted to ask both of you how it was like for you to make this album.
Oh, well, I still don't know much about Magic. So it essentially, like, yeah, as Jason said before, he approached me with this idea, and then he knew what he wanted to write about, except one song where we asked like the Kickstarter people, this tier is reserved for a person that wants to choose the subject of a song, and we had that song about Dakon Blackblade. But in general, like, Jason had the idea for the album, and he wanted to make a big beefy song about Oath of the Gatewatch, and so for me it was about going to the wiki and reading a lot of like wiki articles about different Planeswalkers and the setting, and like watching a lot of YouTube videos of people dissecting, like, you know, sets and going like, oh, this happened, oh, that's cool, oh, and then getting ideas from the concept art and the, you know, the blurbs that I've been reading, and like making something out of that. So for me, it was like I was completely in the dark, other than like what Jason advised me was like, dude, like, what is happening on this? Like, what's going on? And then he would give me like, you know, this is the story. This is like, for Oath of the Gatewatch is like a 10-part story, which is like online. That was very helpful to read. And also Shadow of Emeria, the same. And the rest was like getting the general gist of Magic the Gathering from like just reading about it, because I wasn't like, I've never played before.
Yeah, this first album was very just sort of generic Magic topics, you know. I think moving forward we want to be a little more focused, right? But like the Spark is about just the general idea of a Planeswalker getting their spark. Yeah, Blackblade is about the character, and that's the thing too, is where I was like, you know, I don't know anything about Blackblade, and that was chosen by a fan. So Sozos probably knows more about Blackblade than I do, because he's the one who had to do the research and write the lyrics. I
actually read the comic.
Yeah. So
yeah.
And then Tales of Magic is just sort of a general magic. It's just the feeling. It's not really about anything. And then Forever Serpent's about Nicol Bolas. That was actually the very first song we ever did because we released it as a single like a year before. And so yeah, so it's pretty much I do my best to give him the material he'll need to write the lyrics. I'll try to get it as organized as I can, so when he's looking for the materials to write the lyrics, he's not just all over, he's not, you know, he's not starting from nothing and like hoping he finds the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to work out really well.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree.
To this day, I say all the time, the lyrics to Forever Serpent, like, he nailed it. and that was the first. Like, he knew nothing. I was like, yeah, let's write about Nicol Bolas, and man, chills. So good job.
Dude, you won't, I didn't believe it, but I found a genius.com, you know, the lyric site. Like someone put that song on, and then it had annotations on different parts. And it's like, oh, this refers to that. And this, I was like,
oh, cool.
Oh my god, yeah, people like were into this enough to like explain it to other people. That's really cool.
That is cool. I haven't seen that, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have a new single coming out, and it's called Compleated, and it will be released on July 26th on all streaming platforms. Can you tell me what Compleated is about?
Oh, Jason?
So, Compleated is essentially about Yawgmoth, who is another big baddie in the Magic world. And it's sort of about his rise to becoming this sort of like god king on Phyrexia. Now, Compleated is a process that, so there's so, like, this is the thing we always run, there's so much, but the short version is it's about Yawgmoth kind of founding Phyrexia and rising to who he becomes, right? And we call the song Compleated because completion is sort of the process that turns organic beings into these artificial nightmare creatures, Phyrexians, right? Now, that term doesn't generally come in the early years of Yawgmoth and all that. It's sort of the same thing, but I felt we should call it Compleated because it's a very commonly known thing in the Magic world. So right away, people are like, "Oh shit, I know Phyrexia. I know that." You know what I mean? So even if like, you know, and again, this is where I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Yawgmoth himself never used the word completed, at least in the early years. You know, again, there's so much lore within lore that there's things I don't know. You know what I mean? So I gravitate to the stories that interest me, but there's possibly things I've missed as well. But that's the general idea. And Sozos might have added a little, like he could probably, because again, you know, as the one who writes the lyrics, those are like the notes I gave of like what I wanted, but I'll let Sozos, like, whatever direction he went, how close he stayed to that, or, you know, what spoke to him, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. So like for Compleated, you know, again, I had no idea who this character was, and so I like researched this character, and essentially it was this incredible doctor figure, like a you know, he wanted to cure death essentially, and through like a very long and very subtle undermining process, he became a very highly ranked member of society in the city where the whole story takes place. Yeah, essentially that like the core of all that was this person's ambition and the desire to perfect the body and like cure what can be cured, even, you know, death. And the result and the culmination of all of this was the completion process, which is when a person, like an organic being, is exposed to oil from New Phyrexia, which is, you know, like a location in this story. Their tissue and their body is changed into mechanical parts, and they slowly become a machine. So, but like it doesn't become like a machine in the way that like we have in mind from science fiction. It's kind of a hybrid thing. And yeah, it's you know, like the whole story is less epic fantasy and more like it leans into body horror a lot, I think.
Almost like
And
some Frankenstein stuff.
I would say
there's lots of like
transhumanism also.
hubris, like and reaching to do something that, you know, like mortal beings are not supposed to do. And yeah, like Yawgmoth becomes eventually immortal and a god. And this is like the song is about this person's journey to godhood, essentially.
Yep. And this goes back to, again, what I love about Magic, because we can have Oath of the Gatewatch, which is super fantasy, you know, and then we go to this, which again is more body horror, a little more real, grotesque, and it's really cool. And
yeah, more industrial.
The thing I love is like, and why I love the lore is both of these things can exist in the same universe and not feel out of place. And that's what I love about it, you know. Because like one of Yawgmoth's biggest foes is Urza, and Urza is involved in a lot of like the more fantasy style stuff, and he even has a lot of more wizardy kind of stories, like you'd almost think Harry Potter-ish, just not so happy, like, you know. But my point is like it never feels, it's almost like, you know, a good example might be like, think of Stephen King's Dark Tower universe, where he goes Western fantasy horror, but it never feels out of place. And that's sort of like the Magic lore, and that's what I love about it. Yeah. That was a little off topic, but you know, reminded me why I like it so much. Yeah.
And earlier you said that that was the first time that you both were more involved in the songwriting, and it was not only Sozos, you as the main songwriter, but Jason, you were more involved in the making of the song. How was that for you?
I thought it was fun. You know, I would say Sozos still did a good chunk, because again, like he just comes up with this really cool shit that I just don't think of, man. But you know, being able to finally throw my little pieces into the pie was really cool. And you know, it was really nice, like how we just bounced ideas off, because even just little things like the intro, where I suggested a certain way and I wrote it a certain way, but it was built off the chords he had already put. So at that point, it's like, who really wrote that part? You know what I mean? But it's like, it doesn't really, but that's the fun part of like doing it this way, I think, is there's some parts that's really just such a blend that it almost feels like ours rather than one person, you know. Something Sozos does really well, and I'm sure it's that singer in him, but he writes a lot of these really great melodies, you know. So being able to kind of build underneath those melodies, I think works for me, because, you know, I'm a rhythm player at heart. And so, you know, that was really fun. But I had a lot of fun with this song.
Yeah. I thought it was great that we could like actually like do this close collaboration. And yeah, like Jason said, you can't really tell who wrote what a lot of the time, because he would come up with the idea for it, and then I would suggest something, and then he would change it slightly so that it fit that, and then we would go like back and forth until it's something, but it's like it has both of our like creative ideas in it. So I think that's really cool.
Yep. Yeah. And I've never really worked that way before, so it was a really fun experience. And it's also really opened me up to it, because going back to the new Helium Prime song, the guitarist Alon helped me write that one a lot, and it was the same kind of vibe where I had this riff and I'd show it to him, he would suggest something, and I'd be like, oh yeah, sick, you know. So it's really opened me up to like, hey, collaborations are okay, Jason. It's okay.
Yeah. We can get along.
Because yeah, exactly. Because like, someone will always hear it differently. And in my younger years, I used to be like, but then it's not my riff. And I don't know. I think as I get older, I don't care as much anymore. Like I want the song to be as good as it could be,
You get the spark, and you were
and
ascending like a planeswalker, and now you have a different view on it. I don't know.
See, exactly. But working on this with Sozos and then doing the one with Alon, it adds so much to the songs that pretty much moving forward with like both projects, that's how I'm hoping to work, even with Prime. Because it helps too, because like there's been times I'm so stuck on something and I just don't revisit it forever. But like with this new song, like not to switch to Prime, but it's just making me think about it. With the new song Pandemonium we put out, I had that intro riff for a long time and I knew I wanted it to be the intro, but something felt off. And then Alon wrote that little lead you hear that goes over it, but he originally only wrote it as the intro, as a synth part that went into the riff. And I was like, well, hold on, let me see. And I just kind of copy pasted it over my riff and boom, there it was. It was like the missing ingredient. So, I'm way more about collaboration these days than younger Jason, because I never would have found that if I had been trying myself, so
you're discovering the power of lead guitars.
Yeah, my God, yeah. I know, right? Who knew?
Sometimes riffs are not enough.
It's true, man. Yeah, going back to your question is, the writing for this one, it was really fun. It was really good and really cool seeing it come together, because there are moments in the building process of it where it's like, oh, this is so close, but like what's missing? And then when you both finally have that, oh, there it is moment, and then getting to hear the final product that we have now, it's like, damn.
Yeah.
Like, funny enough, I was going through some old guitar profiles, because I have guitar profiles of just like riffs that never get used, and I opened up one of the Planeswalker ones, like, what's this? And it was the original intro that Sozos wrote for it, and it's a cool riff, but man, it like wasn't it for the way the song went. And but it's just amazing how like we went from this, which if you heard it, it's not even recognizable to what the song is. So it's really cool. It's really cool seeing how things come together.
Yeah, and Sozos, you're mainly known as a vocalist, but you play multiple instruments, right?
Multiple is a stretch. I mainly play the guitar. I have a bass temporarily because I am doing a cover of a song by Royal Blood that is like a bass drum duo. So I'm learning the bass. This is the first time I've actually played it for extended periods of time. But if you know guitar, you can kind of play bass. I'm sorry, bassists. I play a bit of keyboards.
All the bassists who have unfollowed us right now.
Yeah.
But there's a joke, this can only count to 4. We had that in another interview recently.
Yeah. I mean, we are a power metal band. What is that much of a loss? Like it's fine. We can lose the bassists. It's all right.
Don't let Carlos hear this interview.
Yeah, no, Carlos, please stay. We need Carlos. So like I play like I am good at 1.5 instruments and I double in the rest. But it is really helpful having like a keyboard sometimes to try to do some polyphonic stuff that doesn't work on guitar. But most of my songwriting is playing around on the guitar and then using my voice to like come up with lead lines, either vocal or guitar lead lines on top of that. And that's how I want to write. I want to write in a way that the lead lines are actually singable by someone that listens to the song. It's like, because if you try to, I promise this is not because I can't play more complicated stuff. It's that, but also it's because when I write, I like to follow along with the melody, and if that melody is like shredding on top of a riff, that is cool for a solo for a bit, but then it just becomes a blur of notes. But if you write something by singing it, then it means that people can latch onto that melody much easier than if it's some sort of complicated thing, even if it's slow, but it has like big gaps in between the notes. That is more alien to an ear that is mostly used to the human voice, which, you know, has smaller variations in pitch when you sing or when you talk. Sorry, I went off topic, but yeah, that's
No, but
the
I
process.
asked for it. That's okay, because I asked for it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to know more about, I was asking also about your songwriting process. Yeah. And I got to listen already to Compleated, and I think it sounds amazing. And I feel
Thank
it
you.
sounds
Thank you.
darker. Yeah, you're welcome. But I feel it sounds kind of darker than what I've heard from Planeswalker before.
Yeah, and that again fits the topic of the song. It's a very dark topic, right?
Yeah.
So it just I mean, you know, Sozos definitely had some riffs on the first album, but we went really riffy in this one, and you know, Sozos actually said it, but it just felt like this is the direction Planeswalker was always gonna go, you know. And it's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't mean that Planeswalker will sound like this from now on in terms of like the darkness of the sound, because like from what we're planning, there's a lot of variation. There's a lot of different variety, rather. There's a lot of different kind of range of styles that we're going to tackle, and it's not going to be, you know, horror, this kind of darkness. I think the what someone could perceive as dark from this song is very much both from the riffs, of course, but like it's also from the subject matter. And you know, like if you look into it, like for me the song is like, if I imagine the song in my head, it is very dark colored. Like if I kind of, you know, synesthesia it is a dark song, both because of the tone of the guitars, but also because of such subject matter. But yeah, like I'm really looking forward to like write more of this kind of style where there's more of an emphasis on cool riffs as well as melodies, because that's what Jason's domain is.
As a rhythm player, I like to riff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there will also be a music video for Compleated, right? Can you tell
Yep.
something about it? I know it's still in the works, but can you tell something about it already? And will you play then Yakmos and not Jace anymore?
Yeah. So it's not going to be a big production at all. It's going to be like, we're going to try to make it as good looking as possible with the constraints that we have. But it's going to essentially be a video of, you know, musicians playing music. I'm actually recording the video in a couple of days with the same person that helped me record the video for Pandemonium. So he's a like very knowledgeable guy, Philip Zilfo. He's great. We're kind of just rolling with it, and we'll see what comes out. We'll come up with like different ideas on the day, and yeah, I think that's what I have for you for now. And I'm sure if Jason has a like crazy idea before the video, he's going to let me know, and we're going to try to make it happen. But yeah, that's the ideas are like Jason's thing. Jason is the idea guy.
Yeah, I filmed my parts a while ago. I don't want to give too much away yet, because I think
No, don't.
Yeah,
don't.
I think what I did's really cool, but we're gonna save that. Hopefully it looks as cool as I think it does.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it serious
so,
for now, but when it's ready, we're gonna link it here below in the video description for our viewers.
Yeah. Check that. This is
Cool.
description.
Yep.
Yeah, and you also have a very interesting cover artwork for Compleated. It's like, for me, it looks like a machine heart that is constricted by belts and chains, and it is surrounded by a green circle, and the green circle has an inscription. And I wanted to ask you, what language is that, and what does it mean?
So I'm glad you caught that, because that's exactly what I want it to look like. So one of the really fun things I love about Planeswalker is getting to take inspiration from the Magic artwork, but obviously we don't want to just take their art. So this cover art was done by Bo Bradshaw, who's done a lot of awesome work for me, for a lot of bands in the
Unleash the Archers
US.
also. Yeah.
Yeah, he does like all their t-shirts, you know. Seven Kingdoms, Lords of the Trident. Yeah. He's kind of become like the American power metal artist, you know. So the inspiration is we took inspiration from what's called a heartstone. And that's an object that a Phyrexian newt receives. So a newt is like a newly born Phyrexian.
Someone who took
When
it
they're
to a machine by this oil? Is that
right. Yeah. So think of it as it's like their new heart, right? So and so it's like this mechanical heart, and that's sort of like what you're given as a new Phyrexian. So that's the idea. So you look at the heart, it's shrouded, it's machinery, it's dripping the oil, you know, there's still a little flesh to it. And then, you know, we use the color scheme of green because sometimes glistening oil can be represented with like a tint of green, you know. As far as the language, it's gibberish because
okay. I thought it was some cool like Magic the Gathering dialect, hieroglyphs or stuff like that.
So Phyrexia does have their own language, and you can actually buy cards in Phyrexian language. But to play it safe and not, you know, possibly get in trouble for using Phyrexian language, the artist just did something to kind of look like it. But more or less, it's nothing, you know. It's supposed to give that same idea, you know, Phyrexia, the language, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool that you can kind of see skulls on it. I don't know if you've noticed, Jason.
Yep.
But there's a bunch of skeletons on it, and it is. I love that artwork. Like it's very like it's not your typical colors for like a fantasy themed band, but I think it matches the theme that we're going for this song perfectly. I think.
Yep.
Bo knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. And what I'll do with these artists too is I won't show them Magic artwork. So I want it to be completely them. So I'll give them the description of what I'm inspired by, because there is actually a Magic card called Heartstone and it's got their interpretation on it. And you look at it's got like this mechanical heart with like tubes and stuff. So I'll explain that to the artist and then like, oh, I want to add this. But like the gentleman, his artist name is Mad Attic, who did our first album. That's pretty much just a like collage of popular recognizable Magic things, you know. A Black Lotus, yeah. It's got all the colors represented. It's got a Black Lotus, which is the most popular Magic card, and it was the most expensive up until recently, but it's still it's like the most recognizable Magic card. So usually when people see a dark Black Lotus, they're like, oh, Magic. And then, you know, we have a random ring, which might feel random, but there's this card called Soul Ring, which is, you know, like a staple in the format Commander, which is what most people play. So again, the idea was just like all these generic, just cliche Magic things that when someone looks at that artwork, they're like, this looks like Magic the Gathering, you know. And so the same idea was with this cover is I wanted to represent that Heartstone, the oil, the flesh peeling off. So as someone who doesn't really know Magic and you're like, oh, this looks like a mechanical heart, perfect, you know. That means it looks how it's supposed to look. Yeah.
Also looked a bit terrifying, like in a subtle way, I felt. But I guess that's the vibe of the song.
And that's on purpose. Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about inscriptions, I noticed, Jason, that on your guitar that you use in the Planeswalker videos and also in the music videos with your other bands, there's a formula written on it. And I was wondering what it means. Can you share that? Or
yes. Oh, I can. No. Yeah, I got it right here. This one?
Yes, exactly this one.
I have an Explorer just like it back there that's also got the inscription. So that is the Drake equation, which is a you know, theorized equation of intelligent life within our galaxy. Now the meaning to me behind it is this is the custom guitar and so is the backbone. It was built for me by a guy here in Sacramento. And I wanted something on it, and I just wasn't sure. And I was like, the Drake equation will look cool, but I didn't just do it because it looks cool. It's meaningful to me because the Drake Equation was the very first Helium Prime song I ever wrote. So it's meaningful in a couple ways because it fits my normal theme of like the science fiction that I normally do. And it's a callback to that very first song I wrote on my first quote successful release, you know. And it's really fun when people recognize it because a lot of people, you know, not everyone does, but when they do, they get excited. Oh, is that the Drake Equation? And then, you know, you get to have a nerd out moment, and so it's fun.
Yeah.
Cool. And so, as a quantum physicist, what is your opinion on the Drake equation?
So I've, you know, like I've heard of it, and when, you know, we were talking about Helium Prime with Jason, you know, it's definitely a thing. I don't personally believe there's aliens in our galaxy, but that's like a kind of separate thing. The Drake equation itself is fine because it's just a number of percentages. It's like, what is the chance of this happening, and then what is like the rate at which stars are forming, and how many of those have planets, and how many of those planets could, you know, like it's all those conditions that to find out the number of aliens, of civilizations that you can find, that's, you have to kind of like multiply every single one of those percentages. Not all of them, or even most of them, are known. Like, we don't really know how many planets that can support life will develop life. That's like an unknowable thing for now. But it's you know, it's an interesting equation, but it doesn't speak to me, I think, as it speaks to Jason. But yeah, I might be a bit you know, jaded from all the physics.
They ruined you, bro. No.
Yeah.
I kind of believe in the intergalactic zoo theory, that aliens didn't visit us because we're too primitive, and they more regard us as a zoo and come by and take a look and then like, oh, no, thanks.
Oh, so you think they visited?
Yeah, they would visit, but that's the reason why they wouldn't visit us, because we're too primitive, and they more regard us as a zoo and they watch from afar, like for.
I see.
I think
So
it's a very entertaining theory, at least.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So, you know, what's funny is like, I'm, for all these things I love, I'm actually a huge skeptic on most things. Like, I'm also into paranormal stuff. That doesn't mean I believe in ghosts. I'm a skeptic who wants to be proven wrong. Let's just say that. Like, I would love nothing more than an experience that makes me go, okay.
Sounds
You're
like
a
Daniel
romantic
Scully in the
skeptic.
X-Files.
Yeah, a romantic skeptic. So for me, I think it's the same with aliens. Like, the Drake equation, you know, was just a cool topic to write a song about. Really, that's all it was back in the day. Yeah. I'm not about to die on a hill for the Drake equation. You know what I mean? But so the putting it on my guitar was more of a personal thing for me because it was the first song I did with Prime. It fits the theme. But if someone's like, hey man, let's dissect the Drake equation, I probably couldn't even tell you every single. See, again, here's me being that poser, right? Like,
oh yeah, you like the Drake equation? Name 3 songs.
Yeah, name 3 formulas, bro.
Name 3 terms.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you right now. So it's just a thing that makes me think of, you know, it's a reminder of like where it began for me, you know. Not that the Prime album was the first one, but again, it was my first real big boy album. It was the first one that gained traction and, you know, led me to this interview with you, you know.
That's true.
And so that's really what it is for me. But if someone was to come up to me like, dude, the Drake equation's dumb, I'd be like, dude, I got no stake in this, bro. Like, I'm not going to die for the Drake equation.
The Drake equation is dumb, man. It's not even the best equation.
Oh, please don't break up in my interview. That would be so sad if Planeswalkers ended over the Drake equation.
No. The Drake equation is good.
We'll talk later. No.
No.
Oh yeah, my next question would be, Jason, you're going on a tour with Helion Prime on July 5th. Can you tell us more about that? Because you're also going to play some Planeswalker songs. And my question is, Sozos, will you also be somehow involved in the tour? Because I noticed there are some Gloryhammer dates colliding with the tour schedule.
Yeah, I would love to be there and just to like, you know, like just be a fly on the wall and just watch Planeswalker songs being performed while I'm not on the stage. That would be like very surreal and very cool. But yeah, I think Jason, it's you and Barbara.
Yeah. So the idea, and I'll go back to a question you asked me earlier, because this will tie into this that I didn't answer, and then we kind of moved on. But you asked me about my projects. So there's Helium Prime, of Romulus, Planeswalker, and then yes, there's a fourth Dire Apparel, which has been disbanded. Everyone's on great terms. It's just we were also busy with other things. The singer of Dire Apparel does this band Judicator, which is his main focus. And I was finding myself getting a little too, I was trying to do too much, and something had to give. And, Dire Apparel was the one that had no immediate active plans. But bringing us down to Helium Prime of Romulus, Planeswalker. So a lot of people see this and are like, oh my God, this guy has so many things. It wasn't really planned this way. But again, it all starts with Prime. Heather was the first singer. She left because she was doing stuff with another band. Prime is that example of like we took off real fast and it was never meant to be that, and she just couldn't commit. We had a singer, Kayla, for one song, but it only lasted the one song. And then in comes Sozos, and we talked about those kind of complications for a band our size. But again, it's like we didn't break up, we didn't split because we hated each other. It's just like we knew realistically like this probably won't be a good long-term thing. So I knew I wanted to work with Sozos, and we talked about that. Magic the Gathering, I wanted to do it. It felt like a good thing to start working with Sozos again. So I was doing just Prime and Planeswalker. Enter of Romulus, Of Romulus is Heather's deal. So Heather doesn't really do music much anymore. She's not really into touring. It's very much become just a hobby for her, which is fine, but it's not her main thing in life. But she brought up the idea that she's like, I do want to do music for, kind of for fun someday. And I have this idea of a Star Trek themed band. And it started with the idea of I would help her write a couple songs to I wrote the whole album, but it's just, I don't know. I really enjoy working with both Sozos and Heather, so I'm kind of in the mindset of I'll take what I can get, So Heather and I started writing those songs together, and it felt so natural that before we knew it, we had a whole album, and we've put out 2 songs so far. But now the thing is there's all these great songs in my catalog, but Planeswalker doesn't really play. And again, I mentioned before, like sort of respecting the schedule of Gloryhammer. I think we both would like to play, but it's like when we gotta respect that schedule, that demanding schedule. So it's like, will there be a Planeswalker tour? Who knows? I would,
Maybe.
That's so hard to say. And so again, I have all these songs sitting, I know Sozos wrote the first album, but it's still from that project. I have these of Romulus songs, and I have these older Dire Apparel songs that I'm really happy with. And Prime is kind of coming back in a style of like an Avantasia Arion kind of band with multiple singers, right? We won't have just one singer. And this I saw as a great way when I play live, I can pull from these songs that people really like, but never get to hear live. Because again, Heather's even said, like, if Of Romulus becomes huge, she still does not want to tour. Like, she's made it very clear, I don't want to tour. Okay, I respect that, And again, with Planeswalker, like in an ideal world, anytime I play Planeswalker, I'd love Sozos to be there. But I'm glad he's open to the idea of me pulling a few songs, because it's not like I'm going to play a bunch. Like when I do a Helium Prime tour, I still want it to feel like a Helium Prime show. But I like the idea that I can pull a song from here and pull a song from there as a little Easter egg of the other projects that don't really get to play live, And that's kind of the idea moving forward, is so, as I say, these songs don't have to sit on a digital shelf and just be there, because they're great songs and they should be played live,
What's the mix of all your bands, basically? Helion Prime with a little bit of all your other bands on that tour.
Yeah, and I think that's how it's going to be moving forward. It'll just really depend on the shows. Like, if we get on a festival like this tour we're headlining, so I have a lot of freedom to pull a little bit from everything. But say we have like a 40-minute set at a festival, I'm not going to do that. I'm still going to have the bulk be Helium Prime and maybe pull one song from something. Like maybe one of the projects has a new song out, so we'll play that. Or, you know, I can already tell Forever Serpent might become a staple for me just because I personally love playing that song. And every time I play it like on my stream, I get like pumped. Like funny enough, I haven't told Sozos this, but I think that's one of the songs I'm most excited about to get to play live because we've only done it once. Planeswalkers only played that one show, but it's such a energetic, fun song. So again, this is just a way to let these other projects that don't play live get to have a little life out there. But it's a new territory. So this tour is kind of testing the waters and see how people respond to it. And yeah, we're going with Barbara Blackthorne from Empress, and she's amazing. You know, I've gotten used to hearing Helium Prime songs with different singers, so that's whatever to me. But I'm actually really kind of excited to hear like Dire Peril and Planeswalker songs with someone else, especially like Dire Peril, because, you know, Dire Peril's been around for a long time. It was actually around before Helium Prime. A lot of people don't know that because the Helium Prime album came out first, but it's always been John. So it's like, it's hard to imagine those songs without John on vocals. So I'm kind of really excited to hear what Barbara does with those. It will make Prime shows unique going forward, you know? Getting to hear these different interpretations of these songs. And that also doesn't mean Planeswalker won't play live. Like, it just depends. It's all circumstantial. I mean, Sozos and I, we've been friends for a long time, but we've only done 2 shows together, you know? So I'd love to do more. It's just one of those things like it's gotta be, the
stars need to align. Yeah,
exactly. And that goes back to what we said before, the importance of Planeswalker being a no pressure. Like anything I do, I take seriously and I want to see done, but it's still important that it doesn't get to a point where I'm now stressing over what Planeswalker is doing, because then it's losing the meaning and why we're doing it. Like I've asked Sozos if he could do this, if he could do that, and he said like, oh, I don't know, because Glory Hammer this, Glory Hammer that. And cool, all right, you know, but it doesn't hurt to ask, right? So because you never know. And that's pretty much my mentality as we go. Is I'll always ask him if he's down. Either he says yes or he can't do it, and that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and that would be also one of my questions for you. How does your work with Gloryhammer influence your work with Planeswalker and vice versa?
So really, like we've been writing the first Planeswalker album before I joined Gloryhammer. By the time I joined them, it was pretty much done, and we released it like 4 or 5 months after I joined Gloryhammer. So it didn't affect the writing of that album, but in general, I think I have listened to way more diverse like music than I would have if I hadn't joined a band like this. And it's mainly because all the different members of Gloryhammer listen to very, very different music. Like one of them is really into like the early 2000s punk rock. One of them is into like 80s, you know, like Judas Priest. Another one is like classical music, and like another member is very into symphonic black metal. So it's like very different influences. And I've listened to a lot of that because when you're on tour, you kind of, you know, everyone puts on music and you listen to it. And I think in subtle ways, those influences have affected how I see music and how I tackle songwriting. And also, it was also very humbling to see how efficient songwriting can be with Gloryhammer, because like the process is, you know, it's not necessarily faster than having one person do everything. Because if you are one person, you can just like put out a song in theory. But when you have someone like Chris Bowes, who is, you know, the person that created Gloryhammer and is now like helping with songwriting. And when I see how this person tackles songwriting, where like they can just go like, oh, and they send us like a silly idea, and then in like, you know, a week we have a finished song. It's, you know, it's opened my mind to what shortcuts can I use, what like kind of cheat codes can I use to make music that is not only interesting to me, but it's also like very fun to listen to, because it's not something that I've focused on with Planeswalker. I've just written what sounds interesting to me, and thankfully that is something that I see sounds interesting to other people. But it's not something that I would like describe as fun or like purely fun in the way that Gloryhammer is. But I'm starting to see like the benefits of having this kind of approach in a sense. Like, I'm not saying Planeswalker is going to like pivot to that kind of direction, but I kind of started to see what people see in those bands that are like fun rather than, you know, deep or cool or, you know, whatever other adjective.
Nice.
Good.
I
And
would love to learn those cheat codes, so send them over, buddy.
Oh yeah. I have like an Excel sheet. I'll send you.
you could
Oh,
write them
nice.
on your next guitar, maybe also, if you want.
Well, then that's giving away industry secrets, and I might.
Yeah, no. You need to write them, but on the other side, where
Right,
you
on the
can only
secret
like,
side. Yes, the dark side of the guitar.
There you go.
yeah.
Perfect.
Good.
Yeah. So I
I
never
think we
forget.
explored
Yeah.
so much already, but I would have one more final question. What's your biggest dream for the future?
Oh.
Ooh. Jason, would you like to go first?
Yeah. You know, it's so hard because I'm so back and forth with myself these days. But a friend said this to me, and I think it really hit home what I've been trying to tell myself and others. And he was able to do it in a single sentence. And, you know, I love playing music, but a big part of it for me is performing. And that's been my biggest hurdle, is like getting in some kind of flow to just get out there and tour. And I was talking to a buddy, and we were kind of talking about this, and he said, you know, all I want is to reach a point where if I want to go on tour, all I need to do is pick up the phone and make a call. And I was like, dude, that's yes, there it is. Like, I love to perform. I don't need to be the biggest band in the world, but I want to be able to just like, not to like, every time I want to tour, it's not just like stressing me out. And I think just reaching a point where like I want to get out there and go play. Cool, let's make it happen. And obviously I want people to show up. So it'd be nice to have enough people who like the music so we're not playing to like one person. But in general, I just want to keep making music and get out there and perform, because, you know, I haven't toured since 2019, just, you know, the pandemic and then just other complications. And I was getting in a place where I felt like, oh, I'm cool with this, but I think I was just getting used to it. Because now that this tour is coming up, I'm starting to feel that excitement now that it's like less than 2 weeks away. And I'm like, oh yeah, I love this, you know? And so I think for me, that's what it is. And I guess I'd love to get over to Europe and get to play some of those festivals. But again, it's getting those right connections, you know? But yeah, just being able to perform. And like I said, I want to go on tour. Let's make it happen. I have this whiteboard of so many things I want to do. To narrow it down to one biggest dream, it's hard. Every day I have a new thing I want to do. So maybe
like
I don't know
Jason.
if that's, I don't know if that's good or bad, you know. That's why I got this
And I get
whiteboard, because I'm
boring.
like, I was like, I'm losing focus on the things I want to do. So now they're always in front of me.
Yeah, and that's why you delegate to, like, you have a band that like you send stuff to Sozos, and then you have another idea, send stuff to Heather, and then
Right.
you can do everything on your whiteboard as long as you have people to work with.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, like I'm at a point in my life at this point, like, that I've never thought I would be, because like very few people are fortunate enough to do what I do. I don't think we're at quite the point, Jason, where like Gloryhammer could like make a phone call and then like go on tour, because there's a lot of like expenses. I think no matter how big you are, there's
Right.
always like logistics to figure out. For Planeswalker, what I would like is to just like continue to write music that makes sense and speaks to our sensibilities, and like I write the music that I feel doesn't exist in the world and that I would like to exist. And that's kind of how I approach songwriting. And if we manage to play shows with Planeswalker, that's amazing. But I think Planeswalker is a thing that I feel very lucky to be in this kind of collaboration, because there is a small but very tight knit community around it, and we get like a lot of support from people that are into, you know, Magic the Gathering, but also like in our music, and that is like incredible to see. So I just hope this community just grows larger and larger organically. I don't know if I would like for us to go like immediately viral, and then we would have to like, you know, capitalize on it, or we'll lose our chance. I you know, like that's like a very stressful scenario. But if we can manage to like hold this in the shape that it's taking, and then just like write music that expresses us, I would be perfectly content.
And to okay.
No, please.
Oh, I was going to piggyback off what he said is, yeah, if I was to answer this question just Planeswalker focused, then yeah, I think, you know, just to be able to keep collaborating with Sozos, because I love working with Sozos. It's fun. I love seeing what he does with the ideas. And yeah, I think my biggest dream, and I don't want to put words in Sozos's mouth, so if he writes me later, like, dude, what's up?
Dude.
I think if Planeswalker could just do the occasional festival together,
Yeah,
I would be
great.
I'd be very happy with that.
Yeah.
Like, if Planeswalker never tours, fine. But I think it'd be fun just sprinkle in some festivals here and there. Because it's great playing music together, but it's also really fun playing live together. So
I would love to see that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, get me to Europe, bro. Come on. No.
Yeah, man.
I'll try. I make some.
Let me,
let's see.
let me go on the airline website.
Yeah.
But yeah, like sorry, like so to just finish my thoughts.
Yeah.
Like for Planeswalker, that's what I want. But like, you know, in a more broad sense, like I hope the things that I'm doing right now just keep going for as long as possible, because like a lot of people ask me and like think that what I'm doing is tiring. Like obviously it's good, but also like it's exhausting because you're on the road and you're doing these shows and you don't sleep a lot. And I think people might have you know, might have watched a few too many biopics from the 80s, because it can be like a very meditative and very tranquil experience going on tour. Because for Gloryhammer, who only tours like, you know, 3 times a year, which is like very little, like I do very little work for you know, the success that Gloryhammer has. If you want to have a good time, like obviously if you want to party, you can party. But if you're not in the mood and you just want to like do what you would have done at home, you can still do that. So it's not tiring at all for me. That the past like 3 years that I've been doing this, I feel I can be doing this for like another 20 and I'll be fine. So I just hope this keeps going. And of course, at the same time, like I can keep actually writing the music that, you know, when I write, the music that comes to me, which is what Planeswalker is. Like Gloryhammer is not that. It's great music, but it's not music that I would have come up with. It's just music that I convey.
And with Gloryhammer, it's probably very much like, this is what it needs to be.
Exactly. Yeah. There is like a mold, because I joined the band
right
10 years into their career. Like I can't just, you know, you can't just like steer the ship in a completely different direction and go like, oh, this is now going to sound like Planeswalker. No, you can't really do that. But that's fine. Like it is what it needs to be for it to be the great career that I'm currently in. But I wouldn't change what we have with Planeswalker, because that's actually a much more direct expression of my creative sensibilities. So if I can keep both, that would be great.
Yep. And that again for me goes back to respecting the schedule of Gloryhammer. Is I understand there's going to be times where he's just busy with them, and that's just the way it is. So like he mentioned, we did the first Planeswalker album before Gloryhammer was part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to do like this EP and then work on the next album. And then he's like, oh, hey, I'm joining Gloryhammer. And so obviously that has severely halted the brakes, but it's okay. It's just things will come when they're supposed to come, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, and I have the feeling good things will come to you. And I wish you, Jason, all the best for the tour, and Sozos all the best for the
thank you.
you shoot.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
And thank you for this amazing, deep, interesting interview.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I have
thanks
to
for having
say,
us.
this was one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. So thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
I'm
very chill, very very in depth as well.
Yep.
You know,
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad we could all take so much time to discuss these things in depth, because I think your band has just such a unique concept, and there's just so much. We could probably talk another 3 hours, and then again.
No one would watch this, but yeah. In any case, thank you very much for having us. And I think if it was 1 hour, it would feel rushed. I think this is a good stopping point.
I feel so too. Goodbye from
Bye, everyone.